Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Ihon and Chade-Meng for our What's with series for today. Thank you.
Hi everyone. How are you guys feeling? I just came back from DG's event and I can see quite a few familiar faces who were at DG events as well. So Vivina is one of them. Good to see you as well again. So Meng, we have Meng today. I'll quickly introduce Meng and then we'll move into questions. And like Hyro said again, please feel free to jump out on the mic. It's fairly casual. I'm a very casual guy. No, I mean, yeah, that's true actually. Don't literally jump on the mic. But please go up to the microphone and ask the question. So let's do the impressive part first, Meng. I mean, later probably is more impressive, but I'll start off on a high note, right? Apart from being a giant joker, as he has proven to be in the last half an hour, Chade-Meng Tan, or more informally known as Meng, is a Google pioneer. He's one of Google's earliest engineers and an award-winning engineer too. He's also New York Times best-selling author, a thought leader, and a philanthropist. He's currently Google's Jolly Good Fellow, and his current job description says, enlighten minds, open hearts, and create world peace. At Google, Meng led the creation of a groundbreaking mindfulness-based emotional intelligence course called Search Inside Yourself. Search Inside Yourself, incidentally, is also the title of Meng's New York Times best-selling book. Meng's also the founding patron of the let me find it so I can pronounce it correctly. Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism Research, and also the co-chair of the Billion Acts of Peace. 1 billion acts of peace, which has been nominated 7 times for a Nobel Peace Prize. And yeah, welcome Meng.
Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe we'll start at the beginning, Meng. You're originally from Singapore?
Yes.
And very kiasu.
God man, don't have lah.
How did you end up at Google?
Basically, I applied for the job and I got it. but the story a bit longer than that. So I taught myself programming at the age of 12. And then by 15, I won my first national award in Singapore. And then when I was 17, I was part of a team that won the National Software Championship. And I kept winning like awards, right, over and over. So by the time I when I was 28 years old, 1998, do the math. I'm very
21.
old already, yeah. This is the 24th year that I'm 20 years old. So I went to Santa Barbara, for UC Santa Barbara for graduate school, and there was a height of the dot-com boom. And when I graduated, I can basically have any job I want. And the joke somebody told me was, you can get a job, if you put out your resume, you can get a job in 5 minutes. So I emailed out my resume. I literally got a phone call in 5 minutes. Like literally, I was like, yeah, right. And then 5 minutes, phone ring. Yeah, that was like dot-com boom, right? And then in Santa Barbara, my professor rated me the best master's student he's ever had, and he's the editor of a journal. So all those factors add together, right? I can have any job I want. And so when I applied for a job, I applied among others to this company called Google. And they were a small startup, and I remember they called me on a Tuesday, and I told them, look, by Friday I'm off the job market. Yeah, if you're interested, now is the time. So they flew me up on a Thursday. So Thursday I went for the interviews, and then so there's this woman called Marissa Mayer. She's now the CEO of Yahoo. So I was a series of interviews, and Marissa was the she took me out for lunch, and then she told me, we've already decided whether or not to hire you. And I was like, that's either very good or very bad. Only half the day gone. And then on Friday I got a job offer. So that was my story.
Back then Google was pretty small, right?
Yeah. Yes. So when they were interviewing me, they had like fewer than 100 people. So by the time I joined, because of the delay and everything, I was employee 107.
You're employee 107. Wow. So what was different between Meng back then and Meng now?
Younger.
That was quick, actually.
Younger then, not younger now. In case you have to figure it out.
Took me a while, actually. I was just like, wait, hold on a second. That didn't quite make sense.
That was really a serious question.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're always changing, right? So I'm guessing older now.
So how did you get into this whole emotional intelligence practice?
My own practice. Actually, my own practice was actually mindfulness. Actually, there are three pillars to my practice. The first pillar is calming the mind. So developing the ability to bring the mind to a state of calmness on demand. And for those interested in technical terms, it's called shamatha. The second practice is using the calm and clear mind to self-reflect and to observe these processes involved in this thing called self. And for those interested, again, in the technical terms, it's called vipassana. And the third leg of my practice is basically kindness and compassion. And the technical term is Brahma Vihara. So those are my practices. And then the question then is, how did I transition into like developing a curriculum for emotional intelligence, right? So it started with a very small aspiration. All I wanted to do was to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. That was all. And so that was like back in 2003 actually. Right? I was taking a walk and it suddenly occurred to me, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. And then the question I asked myself is how? Right? And I figured it out. I figured the way to do that is to scale inner peace, inner joy, and compassion worldwide. Because we scale these three things worldwide, we have the conditions for world peace. Now the question is, how? Yes, same question, keeps getting harder. And the answer to that I figured out is to align these qualities of goodness with success and profits. Because if I were to go around talking about goodness will not spread. Because people will say, yeah, very nice, and then go home, nothing happens. But if I were to talk about how to be successful, how to make more money, appeal to your self-interest, with peace, joy, compassion being the necessary and unavoidable side effect, then it will spread. Then with the conditions for world peace. The question is, how? And then I figured it out. The vehicle is emotional intelligence, EI. Because everybody knows EI is good for my career. Nobody really knows how to train it among adults. And as mindfulness practitioners, we know. We know how to train the mind, and we know how to train emotional intelligence in ways that goodness is unavoidable as a side effect. And so I got a bunch of the world's top experts together to create the curriculum, which we jokingly call Search Inside Yourself. And it started as a joke. So what you call it? About search inside yourself. People laugh, And I was okay. So that's how it happened.
So Google is about searching of the external world. So you were in Google, so you decided to search inside yourself.
That's right.
Okay, I get the joke now.
Took him a while.
So you use a few words there. Let's break it down a bit. What do you mean by mindfulness and compassion?
Mindfulness is defined as paying attention, but not just paying attention. Paying attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So in other words, moment to moment, non-judging attention. So that's the technical definition. Compassion. Compassion is the wish for others or even self to be free from suffering. So that's a technical definition.
And so how do you then train people to be on mindfulness and also compassion?
Mindfulness is easy. It's easy because we all already know how to do it, right? So I tell people, like, just bring attention to the breath, and just and that's it, moment to moment, just see what happens. Anybody can do it. The hard part is sustaining it and going deep, right? But the practice itself, qualitatively, we all know how to do it. So the practice then involves quantity and depth. That's basically it. Compassion is harder. The reason compassion is harder is because the very definition of the word compassion, compassion. Com means together. Passion means pain. So compassion means suffering together. So compassion necessarily involves some amount of sadness, of pain. Therefore, to train a mind of compassion, there has to be prerequisites, there has to be foundations. And in my opinion, the foundation has to be first the ability to calm the mind, right? And then second, the ability to sustain some level of joy that is independent of sense pleasures, non-sensual joy. And then on top of that, we put in loving kindness, which is defined as a wish for others to be happy. And when you have loving kindness, which is very easy, because you just say, I wish for this guy to be happy. That's all, right? When you have that wish and the wish becomes very strong, it naturally morphs into compassion. Because if you wish for somebody to be happy, after a while, you also want the person to be free from suffering. So it becomes compassion. And then if you build on the foundation of inner peace, then you can sustain it.
So I guess back to your original question of how, right? So how do we then make compassion and mindfulness an everyday practice? Or we all try, right? And we're all lazy people.
Speak for yourself, brother.
I know your habit now. So how do we train ourselves to be more mindful or to find that compassion as well?
Actually, those are two separate questions. Because of the difference in the practices. Mindfulness, as I say, is actually very easy, right? It's just time, just quantity and depth, right? So the practice for mindfulness, there's formal practice and there's informal practice. Formal practice is, they sit in the posture that allows you to be alert and relaxed, and then bring attention to the breath, and every time attention wanders away, bring it back. That's basically basic idea. And every time you bring back a wandering attention, it's like doing one bicep curl for the brain, right? So if you do a lot of this becomes strong, right? And if you do a lot of bringing back attention, this is the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, becomes strong. And that's how over a period of about 100 minutes or so, you begin to develop this strength where you can begin to regulate attention. So for mindfulness, the informal practice is even easier. Informal practice is moment to moment, bring full awareness to sense input and to mental input. That is basically it. Of course, then the issue is the depth, right? So one question is, how deep can you go? There's a story there's a very nice story that illustrates this. So the story is, there's a Zen monk who was like he achieved some high level of meditative attainments. So he got very proud of himself. And then he had the opportunity to meet a Zen master. So he went into the Zen master's room, he bowed down, and he started talking about, well, I've done this samadhi, I achieved this, I achieved that, blah, blah, blah. And the master didn't say anything, master just listened, okay. And when the guy stopped speaking, the master asked him, my friend, when you walked into this room, which feet landed first? And the guy has no answer. And then went back and do 10 more years of mindfulness practice. So that is the degree of mastery, right? That's how far you can go. Compassion, different creature. In a way easier, in a way harder. Harder in formal practice because of all the prerequisites required. Also harder because whereas mindfulness is it doesn't take a lot of effort, like it just calm down. Compassion, it takes some amount of energy to receive sadness. There's also one other thing, which is, so the question is, why compassion hasn't been as popular as mindfulness? So as you know, mindfulness has caught fire in the West, right? Everybody's talking about it. Why not compassion? Two reasons. The first reason is because it is hard, right? Because it requires some level of accepting other people's suffering. The second reason is because it doesn't easily appeal to self-interest. So if you try to talk about mindfulness practice, the first breath onwards, you calm down already. Yeah, I want to calm down, right? Then you say, you calm your mind, you become peaceful, then you can like get more work done. Yeah, I want, right? Compassion is like, accept other people's pain. The one, boring, no got time, right? Right. So there's no obvious immediate appeal. So what is the solution? The solution is understanding compassion, scientifically at least. So there's this guy, we have a common friend, Matthew Ricard. Matthew is known as the happiest man in the world. His brain was, at the time he was measured, he was the highest level of happiness ever measured in the history of neuroscience, by far. I think like 8 standard deviations or something, some ridiculous number. And what was he doing at the time? What was he thinking? Yeah, you mean something very naughty? No, he was meditating on compassion. And according to him and according to the data, there is no other mental state that is happier than compassion. So, and other experiments later on also verified that statement. So if we understand that, then if that information is more broadly known, then the self-interest take effect, right? So that's one. The ease of it, the make it accessible, that one takes more work, and I haven't figured that out yet.
Maybe that's the next book.
Yeah, next book. So compassion, the formal practice, but daily life is actually fairly obvious, actually more obvious, which is when you look around suffering, don't turn away so quickly. At least acknowledge suffering. If possible, motivate, act towards it.
So this is a question that I asked Matthew last year when I hosted him at the World Happiness Forum, and it's a common question amongst social entrepreneurs, very much in this room as well, which is the idea of pain, right? I think for the social entrepreneurs, it's a little bit more natural when we see suffering, we feel it, and the next question we often ask is, so what can I do about it? But sometimes there's this question of like, but if I felt that and I thought of that, why is not everyone thinking that as well? So why do people choose to be ignorant, or do people choose to be not compassionate?
I think they choose to ignore. And the reason is because it's unpleasant. Right? If you see suffering, first instinct is I don't want to see. Right? Turn away. And in that case, the word ignorance applies because I'm ignoring. I think that's the reason. One solution, ironically, is mindfulness. So there is a fascinating study, which is so the study is this: you get somebody into a waiting room, you tell them that they're filling out a form or something, right? And then you give them money. What they don't know is that the waiting room is the experiment, right? So they walk in, and there are 3 chairs in the waiting room. 2 of the chairs are occupied already by Confederates. So these are people who work for the experimenter. And then 1 chair empty. So the subject walks in, chair, sit down. And then after that, somebody walks in on crutches. Appears as if he's in obvious pain. Question: will the subject stand up? Oh, the other 2 guys, right? The Confederates just pretend they don't care, right? And because they pretend they don't care, and the 2 of them, it sets a social norm. So given the social norm, given the walk-in, will the subject stand up? In this condition, about 1/3 of the time, 30% or so. So the 2 experimental conditions. First condition is, what if we train the subject in mindfulness for 8 weeks before we ask them to go there? Second condition, what if we train them in compassion meditation? And so the expectation is that they will both raise the probability of the guy standing up, with compassion raising it more. Right? That's my expectation.
Yeah.
The result is that under both experimental conditions, is increased by to about 60%. So double the 30%. So first, the meditation helped a lot. The second thing is, the surprising part, is that the mindfulness and the compassion training created the same amount of altruistic behavior. So why? Right? And in this case, for a very small amount of sacrifice, it seems that all that is needed is awareness. Once you're aware that there is suffering, you do the right thing. Right?
So what happened to that 40%? Are they just hopeless?
They need more training.
Fair enough. So there's a book that you quoted before, which is also my Bible, From Good to Great, Jim Collins. Jim Collins spoke about the level 5 leaders, right? And you've spoken about how compassion actually built these level 5 leaders. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Okay. So according to Jim Collins, by the way, this is a fascinating story. Do you mind if I tell long-ish stories? If it's too boring, I'll just cut me off, okay? I say, boring! Okay. So the book Good to Great is based on what I felt was a fascinating experiment. Not experiment, a study. And what the team did was they collected data on public companies, I think for fairly long, like 65 to 95 or something. 1965 and 1995. Some amount of time,
Yeah.
fairly long. And they look for companies that went from good to great. So these are like good companies, they're not bad companies. And then for some long period of time, like 15 years or something, they became great companies. And so great is defined as a 3x over performance, and long is defined as like 15 years, so it's not a fluke. So they found these companies and they asked this question: what changed? And how do they compare to those simply merely good companies? And the first finding, and maybe the most important finding, is leadership. So it turns out that the good to great companies have a very specific kind of leader. And they don't have a name for that kind of leader, so they call them level 5 leaders. Right? Because the level 4 are competent CEOs, right? And level 5 is undefined. So level 5 leaders, they are basically competent CEOs with 2 additional characteristics. The first is that they are very ambitious for greater good. Second is they are personally very humble at the same time. Right? So their ambition is to create greater good in the world and not for themselves. And it turns out that people with those qualities, they're very inspiring leaders, which is why they can bring companies from good to great. So therefore, then the question is how do you train level 5 leaders? I thought about this for a while, and then when I looked at compassion has 3 components. The first component is affective, I feel for you. The second component is cognitive, I understand you. The third component, even more important, motivational component. I want to help you. I want to serve. So if you superimpose the 3 on the 2 components of level 5 leaders, humility and ambition for greater good, you might find that the cognitive and the affective down-regulate ego, thereby is conducive to humility. And then the motivational component of compassion creates a condition for wanting to serve, do big things for the greater good. Therefore, compassion is a necessary but insufficient condition for level 5 leadership. Therefore, if you want to train level 5 leaders, you have to train them in compassion.
Wow, okay. I guess then the million-dollar question is how, right? And how do you build that culture as well across the company?
Right. Training of any what do you call it? Pro-social mental states. The way to do that is very surprising. It's just training mental habits. So let me give you an example of a mental habit. The mental habit of kindness or loving kindness, metta, is look at a human being. First thought is, I wish for this guy to be happy. First thought, I wish for that guy to be happy. Right? Why first thought? Because it is a mental habit. Right? For no other reason than because it's my habit. And habit becomes, over time, habit becomes personality. Personality becomes character. Character becomes you. Right? So therefore, you can, just by creating a mental habit, you can become a kind person. And how do you create a mental habit? Multiple exposure. Just think about it often enough, 30 iterations, 100 iterations, whatever, it becomes a habit. Right? Fascinating. Shall we try this experiment? Okay. 10 seconds only, very quick. Won't take up your time. 10 seconds, randomly identify 2 human beings in this room, secretly. So you don't go like, right? Don't do that. And then just think, I wish for that guy to be happy, and I wish for that woman to be happy. So thinking, don't say anything, don't do anything, just think. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, thank you. So this is it. Do this a lot, it becomes a habit. So this is a training, very easy, right? By the way, do you notice that in those 10 seconds, you were happier than the 10 seconds before? Like, increases happiness already. To be on the giving end of a kind thought is intrinsically rewarding. Therefore, if that is true, you might have just found one of the most important secrets to happiness. Right? Nothing changes. All you do is initiate a thought. And everybody I've ever known in my life can initiate thoughts. Initiate a thought, and the thought is simply, I wish for that guy to be happy. And then your happiness level changes already. How far can you push it, by the way? I once gave a talk on a Monday night, and then the next day, Tuesday, is a working day. So I give this homework. I say next day, go back to work, try this. Every hour, spend 10 seconds wishing for 2 random people to be happy, secretly. So it's not embarrassing, right? So you go like, no, don't do that. Just think, right? Not embarrassing, and then go back to work. So that was Monday. Wednesday, I received an email from a total stranger, and this woman says, I hate my job. I hate coming to work every single day. But yesterday, I tried out the homework, and yesterday was my happiest day in 7 years. Happiest day in 7 years. What did it take? It took 80 seconds worth of thinking. So that's the good news. The better news is that, as far as I can tell, all qualities that we consider saintly, compassion, kindness, altruistic love, gratitude, everything that I can think of can be framed as a mental habit. Therefore, can be trained as a mental habit. Therefore, all saintliness qualities are trainable. Therefore, saintliness is trainable.
Okay, you have to take some time to let it, simmer a bit and whoa. For me, I think oftentimes the difficulty is actually the later part of then, you understand someone's pain, you get it. The building the empathy part is I guess the easier part. Is the last step that you mentioned, which is to then wish for someone to be happy or take an action, and that's the most difficult part. And oftentimes, we talk about this reward or punishment, right? It either feels pain or it feels rewarding. Does it always have to be pain and reward? Like yesterday I decided to berpuasa with my fellow team members, and this is the funny part. It was. I haven't told my joke yet.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, man, wait.
Throughout
the later part of the day was the most difficult part. And there are times because I am hungry, I was tired, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. and I was sleepy, and I caught myself being cranky and just want to every time someone do something, it's just I just want to go off at the person. But I didn't go off at the person. I'm ashamed to say this, but partly it's because I was so tired that my reaction was a bit slowed down. So I was like, never mind, just let it go, Eon. But part of it actually is just like, Eon, you chose to fast, so just stay in that zone. So does it always have to be, that there is a consequence or there is a reward or punishment for us to then really get into that kind of habit?
I still don't see what the reward and punishment is.
So the punishment is because I was too tired, right? I know if I go off at that person, I will just be wasting my energy. And the same is mindfulness, right? You get into mindfulness because it gives you that momentary moment of joy and peace. So that's the reward part. So does it always have to be? Does human always need to be motivated by pain or reward, or punishment or reward?
It appears to be. Yeah, sorry, I still don't understand the question very well. I'm supposed to be a smart one. I'm the stupidest person I know with an IQ of 156.
I don't even know IQ, the gradient. That's how stupid I am then. Meng. So if we understand, if everything takes either punishment or reward to form a behavior, if we want to form behaviors, do we always start thinking, when we think about how, right? Do we always start thinking about how do we create rewards and punishments to form habits?
Yes.
Is it always true that way?
I don't know if it's always true, but I know it's skillful. Right? So for example, to form a habit, there are actually, let me see, the 3 parts. There is the trigger, there is the action, and then there's a reward. It has to be the 3 parts. Example, there's this habit I hope you all have, brushing your teeth. Otherwise, please don't come talk to me after. Brushing your teeth. And so the trigger is time of day, right? We wake up and just before we sleep. The action is this. And what's the reward? The reward is a refreshing feeling. Right? The reward reinforces the habit. And so without the reward, it's very hard to, without any of the 3, especially the reward, it's very hard to see how to form a habit. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think in my daily life now, like, so I'm really lazy to floss. So I was just like, how do I then? I have to almost like force myself after I brush my teeth, like sit down in bed and like start flossing. It's like, oh my god. So how do I find that, make it into a habit? I guess it's the reward part of the flossing.
Yeah. The question is, what's the reward?
Yeah.
But if the reward is chocolate, then no point.
I was just thinking that that's the first thought that I have actually. So you've worked with many leaders, right? President Obama, Eric Schmidt, and this guy.
I didn't work with Obama. I just met him. That's all.
Oh, but you worked with President Carter,
Yeah.
and also Clinton, right?
Not really work with him. I
Okay,
just saw
just
him a
Carter.
few times.
Just saw him a few
Yeah.
times. So, do you see any? Do you see common traits across effective leaders or leaders that you have, you admire more and stuff?
Yeah. Among leaders that are very effective, there's one thing in common, which is going from I to we. So, in fact, I think that is the most important part of leadership. If you don't go from I to we, then you'll never be a successful leader. To me, it's like the basic.
So then, how do you? So if compassion is so compelling, why are not more companies actually embracing that? Yeah, I mean, social enterprise is a good example where you balance between compassion and also business. But how do you encourage even more companies, especially the one who are just purely focusing on profit maximization, to focus on doing good as well?
I think we actually need those two things. The first is the science, so you understand compassion scientifically. Yeah, and the second is a way to appeal to self-interest. Yeah, so yeah, then things we talked about just now.
If you guys have any question, like I said, please go up to the microphone. So there's one right there and another one right here. And yeah, if I don't see you, wave your hand like crazy so I see you, and we can then ask a question.
As you're going up the question, can I tell a story about?
Please go for it.
So about the science of compassion, things that they are beginning to come out, they're fascinating. Like things that we never thought about before. I can tell you two stories. One story is again involving Matthew. He was in the lab of Tanya Singer, who is a very well-known researcher on empathy. So Tanya put Matthew inside the fMRI machine and asked him to meditate on empathy. Right? So he showed him pictures of people suffering and just empathize with them. So Matthew did it, and after a few minutes, Tanya started scolding Matthew. What are you doing? What are you doing? Say, how come your brain scans are all different from everybody else? And he was like, I'm doing compassion. And Tanya said, no, don't do compassion. Do empathy. Fine. So he did empathy, brain scans are different. So what's different? The difference is, so first, what's the difference between empathy and compassion, right? Again, fascinating topic. Empathy is when our bioscience are synchronized, right? So you have a certain emotion, and then your emotion is reflected in your heart rate, your blood pressure, and those things. And then if I empathize with you, I'm synchronizing with you. So your heart rate and so on becomes mine. And so therefore, there is such a thing called empathy fatigue. Because if I'm always experiencing your suffering, I get tired. Compassion turns out to be different. Compassion, it shows up differently in the brain. So in empathy, some part of the pain part of the brain lights up. In compassion, the happiness part of the brain lights up. And so what's the difference? According to Matthew, the difference is loving kindness, calmness, mindfulness, and most importantly, selfless love, agape. Right? So those things are happen in compassion, and therefore Matthew says it is very rejuvenating, right, and energizing. Therefore, he said there is no such thing as compassion fatigue, because compassion is always energizing, as opposed to empathy, which can be fatigue. So that was fascinating. Yeah. So it's like science like this coming out. They're giving us a new wisdom into compassion, and those things will move compassion forward.
That's really fascinating. Because one of the big thing that came out of donation in the not-for-profit world is this empathy fatigue, right? When you see so many posters of people suffering and asking for money, at some point you just go, how much can I give? And you just decided not to do anything about it. We have a question from Vivina from UNICEF.
Hi. First of all, it's a real pleasure to get to hear you speak, so thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my beautiful voice. That's why.
It must
Yeah, I'm the first guy to do this. So I'm very happy to be breaking the glass ceiling.
Exactly.
Good. I feel a little bit shortchanged when you were talking about effective leaders and the going from I to we, and you didn't go into that very much, and I'd like to hear more about that. And just if I can add another question, I work in a world where we talk about universal rights and universal values, and I'm wondering if there's anything about the recipe for effective leadership that you have found as universal, or if there's a Western or Eastern or Northern or Southern definition.
I'll answer the second question first because there's something very interesting about that, about universality
The universality.
of leadership. And what I'm thinking is not East and West. It is I think in Taoism, there is a saying, 道义有道, right? So even the bandits have morals. And this is not exactly true, but the story is fascinating. The story is that the bandit is a head of a gang of bandits, and he was explaining to Confucius that even bandits have morals. And Confucius said, "What do you mean?" So the bandit king, the bandit leader says, "Well, every time we rob a place, I always go in first. Every time we retreat from a fight, I'm always the last guy, and so on." Right? So even the bandit king displayed leadership qualities, and the bandit king told Confucius, if any bandit cannot do any of those things, he will never be a leader among bandits. So those qualities of leadership are so universal, like self-sacrifice, like taking care of the greater good rather than my own good. Those things are so universal. It's true even for bandits, and I think it's true East or West. They are I think they're universal values. What else?
The elaboration of the I to we.
I to we, in my opinion, it is serving the greater good, which is, I think there are two ways to look at it. One is subsiding your own, make your own self-interest less than the greater interest, which is good. But even better is aligning self-interest with greater good. Right? So if there's something that is good for the world or good for organization or good for a team, and if I do that, I'm also happy. I'm also serving myself. I think that is going from I to we.
So, do you have another question here? Yeah.
Hi, I have a question on basically technology and the infiltration of so much information. Do you see it as something that will help with mindfulness, or it will actually be an obstacle? And yeah, how do we get about it if it's the latter?
Right. It is, in my opinion, definitely an obstacle. The reason is this. The reason is that the currency of information is attention. Right? You have to use attention to consume information. There's no other way. Therefore, abundance of information always leads to a poverty of attention. Right? So, I think we are partly responsible. I apologize for that.
You should.
Yeah.
You build it.
My team. Not I built. All of the Google built it. We created a world where information is abundant, which is a good news. The bad news is that it's consumed unskillfully, right? To the degree that I think we are sacrificing information. We're sacrificing wisdom for information, because to get wisdom, I think it is necessary to go within. To me, spirituality is looking within, and through looking within, going beyond self. So there are two parts. You have to go beyond self, and you have to start by looking within. And if all you do is consume information, then there's not enough attentional resources to look within. So the solution, I think, is first knowing the problem, right? The currency of attention, currency of information is attention, and knowing that thus become skillful with the application of attention. Like knowing that to consume information, I'm paying attention price, and sometimes not worth paying. So there's a discipline in that. Whether there's a technology solution, I'm not clear yet.
So that was the primary reason why how Wisdom 2.0 came about, right? So do you want to tell us a bit about Wisdom 2.0? You organized it this year.
That's right. So Wisdom 2.0, it is basically what Ihon just said. It is a conference to bring together some of the world's leaders in the wisdom world. So basically the John Kabat-Zinns and the Jack Confields of the world. Also the technology leaders, so some of the founders of Facebook and Twitter, and some Google guys are there. And also the other leaders. So we had the president of Rwanda, we have the US congressman, we have this guy called Bill Ford, who is the chairman of Ford Motor Company. And so all these people coming together to talk about precisely this topic, which is information technology and wisdom in the modern world, right? The sacrifices, the trade-offs, and how to skillfully weave them together. And a couple of days ago, we just brought it for the first time to Asia, to Singapore, and Datuk Sri was there. Thank you, Datuk. And so yeah, it was really successful. And maybe I hope we have it next year again, and I hope
maybe in Malaysia.
Maybe. Thank you.
So I have a question around technology. So that was technology and I don't remember. So the other question I had was around technology and empathy. I keep saying, or internet more specifically, and empathy. Internet has given an access to all stories and also a lot of issues as well. Do you think the internet has helped us build more empathy in the world?
It's not clear to me either way. So when you have access to when you know more about people's suffering, there's more opportunity for empathy. At the same time, there's also a lot of junk information, right? For example, if you say junk food, like why do I eat so much junk food? Because I can, right? And I think the same with all of us, because we can. And why do we all consume so much junk information? Because we can. And so I think that I couldn't figure out which is the bigger force, so much junk information or the opportunity to empathy and compassion. Yeah, and I think it's up to the individual person. And my guess, without data, my guess is that now it's trending towards the junk. Yeah.
That's not good news.
Yeah.
JJ, do you have a question?
Hi, I have a questions on compassion and empathy, right? So if empathy is on feeling pain, and compassion is on feeling joy when you see somebody is suffering, how do you feel joy when you see the suffering, right? Yeah.
I actually asked Matthew about this, and Matthew says what is important is there is a state called healthy sadness. Right. So when you see somebody suffering, you're sad that this person is suffering, and this sadness can be healthy. So first, what's the difference between healthy sadness and unhealthy sadness? The difference is in one word: despair. So unhealthy sadness is always sadness based on despair. Healthy sadness has no despair. There's a sense of power in this. So very important, which is that when in the practice of compassion, expect sadness. If you're not sad, then maybe it's not real compassion. And just make sure that the sadness is healthy. And on top of that sadness, what happens if proper practice of compassion, at least in my opinion, and I could be wrong, it is stabilized by equanimity, it is infused with loving kindness, and altruistic divine joy. And because of that, in addition to the sadness, there's also a joyful component. So it's both.
So there you go, Hyro and Sharifa, the community and outreach team, oftentimes go out to visit all the social enterprises, and they're always the first ones to cry. Every time they see anything, they'll just be like, oh, and so that answers now why you cry is the compassion. Michael?
Hi everyone, Michael Teo from Thriving Talents. Thank you, Meng, for a very inspiring sharing session. I have a question for you, but more of a challenge, you see. So what my company do, we work with a lot of companies, including Fortune 100 companies, to help bridge the gap between Generation Y, people born after 1980, according
That's
to some
you?
definition.
Young People in 20s, yeah, that's me.
There you go. So we work with Generation Y to bridge their gap with the more senior generations. We call them the wiser generations. So I think when you talk about compassion, it's very important for the top management, especially the ones from the wiser generation, to have compassion to understand and empathize with the Generation Y. However, recently we're working with a client which is one of the world's largest investment banks. And their first challenge to us is convince 50 of my top managers, from CEO down to the senior vice presidents, why should they be compassionate towards the demands of the Generation Y? Meaning because they believe that if I throw money to the Gen Ys, they will work for me and they won't hop to other investment banks, which to them has proven to be very untrue. So I think my question to you is, how would you advise these investment bankers or even world leaders or high governments or high executives who have been earning all the cash they want, living their life, instructing, ordering people around, to have compassion over a younger generation who will form the largest group of the workforce in the years to come? How would you coach them? How would you train them? How would you advise them? Thank you, Meng.
I'm not clear what you mean by compassion for Gen Y.
In a sense where, like the top management, for them to have more
you mean that
compassion.
more understanding of
More understanding, because some of the clients I work with, they just shut it off. Like you said, ignore. They just ignore, saying that I'll just pay you more salary and I expect you to listen to me.
Right.
And especially in the banking world, from our point of view, because that tends to happen. So how would you tackle this challenge?
I don't really know, but I can tell you my opinion of Gen Y, and that might be a partial answer.
About yourself, yeah?
About myself, yeah. young handsome guy like me.
Thanks. Oh, I thought it was me.
Oh, okay. By the way, I keep saying that I'm very good looking. The reason is because if you lie about something often enough, it becomes true.
No.
So I just keep saying that. After 30 exposures, you would think that, wow. So then you believe it. Like, so exposure 29, I say 29 times, you say, he's not good looking. I say the 30th time, he's so good looking. What changed? I actually have a lot of respect for Gen Y. And the reason I think, and you may disagree with me, but I think that Gen Y is the most enlightened generation we've ever had. And I tell you why I think that way. A lot of us, at the age of about 40 or 60, come to the conclusion that money is not really so important, right? We make enough to do well, and more money doesn't make you happy. What's important is meaning, service, and stuff like that. So a lot of us figured out in the 40s and the 60s. Gen Y is the first generation I know of where the entire generation figured out in the 20s. Yeah. So maybe if more people agree with me, and maybe people, if it's true, if I'm right, right, because I could be wrong, but if I'm right, and if it's more common knowledge, then maybe Gen Y will be more integrated, or more understood rather. Thank you.
That's a fascinating one. Gen Y, the argument's always there, right? Whether Gen Y is more enlightened or not. And I think it kind of can be correlated to the question around, does internet create more empathy? Because Gen Y did grow up with the internet. And it's one that I haven't decided yet on. We might take the last 4 questions before we end. So do you want to go?
Hi, I'm Vivian from Yunus and Youth. So I see these 4, on behalf of your 1 Billion Acts of Peace project, I see these 4 trends that is happening, like when youth say they want to tackle something, they'll be tackling unemployment, education, empowerment, and environmental issues. Due to your 1 Billion Acts of Peace thing, do you think that these are the 4 things that you have seen? And also, do you see your portfolio of 1 Billion Acts of Peace as a portfolio of the solutions to the biggest problems in the world?
The way I see it, so the reason we have 10 areas in 1 Billion Acts of Peace is because 10 Nobel laureates were asked to name their favorites. That's how we're 10. If it's up to me, because I'm an engineer and because I'm lazy, I like to simplify things. And if it's up to me, I'll simplify it 3 things: ending global poverty, ending global injustice, and ending environmental destruction. That's all. And I do think that they talk about the 2 pillars of world peace. I didn't talk about it. So earlier I talked about inner peace, inner joy, compassion worldwide. I think that's only half of the world peace solution. The other half is global action. Global action to eliminate poverty, injustice, and environmental destruction. And the only way to do that, as far as I know, and again I could be wrong, because I'm so good looking, so we can't be smart and good looking at the same time, you know. The only way that I know of is it's a massive global movement that all of us contribute to this together, right? So which is the impetus behind 1 billion acts of peace, to eventually spark a global movement. And I do think that if we're successful, that would be the solution to the world's problems. I can give you one example, which to me was fascinating. An example of a bunch of Tibetan kids living in India. And so they went through the Peace Jam program, which sponsored 1 billion acts of peace. And they were encouraged by the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama said, look, we live in India. We are here because of the kindness of our hosts. So we should do something for them. And so they were like looking for something to do. And they realized that there's below the hill, downhill is a slum village. And they have no access to fresh water. So a bunch of teenagers, just Tibetan teenagers, they dig a trench all the way down. And then they solicited donation of piping and taps. And now all the families downhill have access to water. Right? It's all because of a bunch of teenagers. And so if teenagers can solve problems, why not the rest of us? Like young people in their 20s or older people in their 30s.
40s actually.
Yeah, okay.
We might go with the question here first.
Hi. I want to say thank you again for doing this talk. It's been fascinating so far. I actually want to ask you, what is your personal opinion of Edward Snowden and his actions? And I was wondering, because I want to see how much of a gray area compassion can be. Some people call him a traitor. He could have endangered national security with state secrets, while others call him a hero for revealing the extent of the NSA's monitoring actions.
I haven't formed an opinion, and I don't feel I have enough data to form an intelligent opinion. So yeah, so I don't have one.
Michelle?
Hi, Meng.
Hi, Cheryl.
As CEO of MaGIC, I would like to thank you for, of course, being here and spending so much time with us, but also spending some time with the MaGIC team and our partners. I asked a few questions just now, but I actually wanted to ask a more practical question around mindfulness, because I have tried to meditate, but I haven't found a good routine yet. And in terms of mindfulness and compassion, I definitely have, practiced that. I'm just wondering how it relates to journaling. Do you journal? Because I found that is one way that I sometimes use. Like you taught us a few breathing exercises just now, and how to get into that mode of all these thoughts coming in, right? So for me, writing down my thoughts actually helps me verbalize what is messy in here, and clarify my thoughts so that it can drive action, focus and action, and then to drive results. So how do you integrate, or do you not integrate journaling into mindfulness meditation? Thank you.
So in SIY, in Search Inside Yourself, there is actually a big journaling component. And precisely for the reasons you just described. It helps to clear the mind, right? Specifically, like you said, if you don't clear the mind, it's all here. Then by writing them down, you can release them. So I agree, and it is also not a substitute for mindfulness practice. Because for mindfulness, for example, if you are triggered, right? Let's say this guy says something nasty, for example, and it's like, what's that, right? And then if you have the mindfulness practice, you have the ability to calm down and don't say something nasty back. Journaling doesn't necessarily provide you that tool, because you can say, wait, let me journal first. Right? So it's not a substitute. So my suggestion is, if you do journaling, which is very good, don't neglect your sitting practice.
So we have one more question here. I do have to stop after the last question.
We should just keep the mic on.
My question is does someone's faith, belief, or religious background affect someone's emotion intelligence? And how does you actually create to change the social norm? As our current situation is, we don't give rewards. We do crowdfunding application, we don't give rewards to people. Most of the case is on the religious affections towards someone that allow them to fund someone campaign. So does religious affect someone's EI?
So what's the second part of the question?
How can we enhance? We're not giving rewards. How can we change the norm of the society?
Who's not giving rewards?
We are doing a startup company, a crowdfunding company. So we don't provide rewards to the sponsors. They are giving the money to the students based on their, I think their
Altruism.
yes. So how can we expand that kind of situation?
So the second part of the question. So from what I understand, they're a startup company which is a crowdfunding startup, and they don't provide rewards because crowdfunding usually provide a reward, right? But it's really very much about altruism for giving. So you crowdfund for students who cannot afford to go to schools or universities. So it's very much based on that altruism. Can we scale altruism? Yeah?
So the first part of the question is whether religious people are more or less emotionally intelligent. I don't have data to say either way, and I have no reason to believe one way or the other. Second, can I make a joke about gender? After running a SIY class for a while, a lot of men come and tell me, sorry, a lot of women come and tell me, my husband took your class and he's a different man. Very few, no, zero. Not a single man came to me and said, my wife took your class and she's a different woman. Why? And my theory is because men start at a much lower base. So women are like higher. So men are more improved than the women. So that's what I have data for.
So can we scale altruism?
Yes, definitely we can. So first, I think that altruism is its own reward, right? Giving itself is a reward. Then, so the reward problem is, I don't think it's a big problem. I mean, there's small ways to solve it, right? Which is like the person you give a scholarship to write a letter back to you. It's tiny things like that. I think it helps, but I don't fundamentally think there's a problem. So the question is, if it's not a problem, why is it not more popular? I don't know. I think it has to do more with awareness rather than lack of altruism. So for example, if let's say there's a company that is very famous in the world, let's say the eBay of what do you do? Everybody knows about it, then maybe a lot of people more will be doing this.
One last question over here.
Thanks, Ihan. Meng, thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's been a real pleasure hearing you share your thoughts. I think the impact of compassion that you've been sharing is very real. I think the examples that you've shared have I think we can all appreciate that and see that. If we pause and we think about also at the same time the world around us, much of the innovation, much of the development that we see has been driven by competitive spirit, in part. And at surface level at least, it seems that competition and compassion may be at odds with each other. So it'd be great to hear how, help us understand, one, can these two ideas coexist? And if that's the case, how we can make that happen?
In my opinion, they're not opposing each other. Right? You can have competition in a setting that is not destructive. I can give you at least one very common example: sports. Right? Friends play basketball with each other, and at the end of the game, they don't kill each other. Right? They like each other more. Right? So it's not always true that competition is always bad. It's always bad for relationship. Sometimes it's good for relationship. I think sometimes can be good by itself, right? Independent of other factors. I think that what is more important is to compete fairly and non-destructively. So for example, let's say I have a bakery, and this guy, because he's smarter than me and better looking, he started a bakery next door, and better food and better prices. Wow, then I charm already, right? So now my business is all going to him. So what do? I need to compete. So there are a couple of ways I can do that. One is I can just tell all my friends, hey, don't go to this guy. This guy, he don't like cats, right? He's not a good person, right? Or I can just malign him or something. The other way I can compete is I make bread that's even better than his, right? At a competitive price, right? So the first one is destructive. The second one is beneficial for everybody. So I think that if we all compete in ways where we're aware or mindful of thinking, let's compete in ways that benefit everybody, then it is compassionate competition. And I think it's highly doable.
So I've got 3 more questions, Meng, for you to just to close it all up.
Okay.
The first one is around, you're a big joker. I mean,
God, man, don't have lah.
God. Even, I mean, your job title was started as a joke, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Your book title also started as a joke.
Yeah.
So that is there a role between, you know, being that joker and the compassion bit or the mindfulness bit?
Oh, definitely. There is a saying in among wisdom teachers that the moment when people open their mouths to laugh, that's when you can put in the pill of wisdom. Which is why wisdom teachers have a tendency to be funny, right? Because they will laugh and then they give you the real wisdom teaching.
I think MaGIC, everyone laughs like that.
Yeah. And then I think in addition to that, so I have a I have a saying, right? My motto, I think you might have found out, is life. My motto is life is too important to be taken seriously. And I live that motto, right? Like even the most important things, I make jokes about it.
Yes.
And the reason I do that, my mechanism, what's the foundation of that? Is a practice I do every day, which is reminding myself that someday I will die. Right. So if by looking at my own mortality, priorities change, perspective change, and I think the one of the biggest mistakes in life is living as if we live forever. And the moment we shift our perspective, that someday we're going to die, and every day we remind ourselves that life is different.
That's difficult to follow after that. The second last question I have is homework. So you already given us a homework, which is, you have given us 2 homework. One is to take 1 breath a day.
Yeah.
Commit to one. Oh, you didn't. Maybe you should give them. Yeah. But you've given everyone here one homework, which is think about 2 random people that you want them to be happy about, and for that. So what other homework should we be doing to build up that compassion?
Just these 2 homework. Okay. So can I assign homework to all of you? Okay. First homework is, so tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow's a work day, right? Remember what we talked about earlier? Okay. Tomorrow, every hour, randomly identify 2 people walking past you in the office, and just wish for them to be happy, secretly. Okay. So don't have to go like, just think. Okay. First homework. Second homework, take 1 mindful breath a day for the rest of your life. That's all I ask for. So for those who are meditators, sit in a proper meditation posture, whatever that means to you, and then bring full attention to 1 in breath and 1 out breath. And then your commitment to me is over, and you can do more if you want. Okay. For those who are not meditators, just sit in any position you want, and just take 1 mindful breath. Sounds good? Okay, that's our homework.
We should put in our calendar so that every day we do that. At my previous startup, we have this thing where at 9:32 a.m. every morning, we chose a weird time because everyone remembers it. Everyone would have to go on Yammer and write out what their thing is for the day, but also what's the awesomeness that happened yesterday that we should celebrate about today as well. Yeah. So last question.
Yes.
Any parting wisdom? Remembering most of these people here are either social entrepreneurs or working with social entrepreneurs.
Oh, parting wisdom. Anybody saw the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? Yes. So so Bill and Ted. That's the 2 things they say is, be excellent to each other, and party on, dude. Yeah. So maybe by parting, maybe that's just first half. Be excellent to each other. So thank you.
please join me thanking Meng. Thank you so much, Meng. Thank you. So Meng is spending a very short amount of time in Malaysia, and he's been shipped around everywhere to share his wisdom, given his very young age. So we're really appreciative of you taking time to come here, especially at this time of the night, and sharing with everyone. But I also want to, there's a couple of thank you I want to say. First of all, I want to thank you, our partners, Roots and Shoots, for being incredible partner with us and make this happen. And so thank you very much. The second one is Zane and Co. You guys have been incredible and a huge supporter of the work that we do right from the beginning. So a very sincere thank you to Zane and Co. as well.
Especially to Sawa.
Especially to Sawa, absolutely. Yeah. So Sawa is the lady in white. So when you guys on the way out, you see Sawa, make sure you thank her. The third thank you is to my teams who have worked very tirelessly to ensure that Meng has a good time here. And you guys also learn as much as you can. And I always say that I work with the most talented team because they really work the extra hour and always go that extra mile just so that we can have an epic experience. So thank you so much to you guys. And then through you guys as well, especially the social entrepreneurs, I know that the thing that you work on is not easy. And you guys, but you guys are literally changing the world for the better, and the world is only better because of people like you. We talk about global action, right? And these are the people who are taking global action. So I highly encourage the people in this room who are not a social entrepreneur, not working as a social entrepreneur, get in touch with one of them. So for the social entrepreneurs, you want to put up your hand? I see a few here. Julia, you want to put up your hand? So these are the social entrepreneurs who work day in, day out to try to make this world a better place. So if you guys can support them in any way, whether through your expertise, volunteering with them, consulting, providing pro bono support, or even funding. Funding is a big one. Or procure from social enterprises. Please do so. But thank you for the work that you do so that my generations and the generations to come can have a better and brighter future and making Malaysia a much better place. So thank you again. Meng, we have a token of appreciation for you, and then we want to take a selfie. Is that a Wi-Fi? Whatever young kids call it these days. So, Cheryl, you want to come up? Cheryl?